A Passion for Mushrooms by Chronological. Chapter 8. Learning by Learning. It was very early, Bilbo thought to himself as he tapped lightly at the door to Balin's office. Probably the dwarf was not yet at work. Bilbo would have to come back later, some other day even. Unfortunately, he had no such luck. Balin opened the door at once and welcomed Bilbo in with a smile. The old advisor was not even alone. Thorin and Ori were both with him, looking over some papers at Balin's large writing desk. "Oh," Bilbo said, turning to go. "I'm interrupting, my apologies. Perhaps we can speak later." Stopping the little hobbit easily with one hand to his shoulder, Balin turned him around. "Some trouble you're in, then, lad?" No trouble, not exactly. I just wanted your advice. Well, to run something past you, really, and see what you thought of it. But obviously you're advising the king right now, and that is much more important." "We will leave you," Thorin said, drawing up the wistful eye with dignity and authority. Bilbo sighed. "No, please don't, if you have a minute. I should like to know what you think as well." "And how angry you will be," the hobbit added silently. Really, it was best to get it out of the way all at once. "Very well," the king said, looking at Bilbo impassively. Rather than fumbling with words, Bilbo simply took the golden cauldron pin, with all of its diamonds, rubies, and emeralds, and pinned it to the front of his jacket. All three dwarves understood at once, judging from the way Ori immediately started swearing in Coastal. "So perhaps I acted hastily and without full possession of the facts, especially since I was aware that the situation is a bit political. But can you tell me why it is such a bad thing that I should join Bumba's guild?" "It is no bad thing," Thorin said, smiling with a great deal of warmth. The king put a hand on Bilbo's shoulder. "Allow me to congratulate you on your mastery. I know little of cookery, but I know that you deserve it." "It is a terrible thing!" Ori cried. "That snake! That dragon! He knew that you were working with me in the library! That is as good as an apprenticeship, though you have not paid me! May his mustache wither and fall off! Now that you will land in our lord, which is as good as any dwarf and better than most, I should finally have been able to teach you proper runes!" "Please, Ori," Balin said. "Bilbo can still study Coastal with you and take mastery with the Guild of Scribes, should he desire it." "Second mastery?" Ori said, as though it was another curse. Bilbo said, "I don't quite—" "Many dwarves take up other crafts once they have mastered their first," Balin explained. "A great warrior, for instance," he nodded to Thorin, "might become a master blacksmith as well, to better understand his weaponry. I myself have a second mastery with the Guild of Scribes, due to my study of political histories." "It's not the same!" said Ori. "Ori is distressed because first loyalty goes to the first mastery. If you should join other guilds to study other crafts, your first duty would still be to the Culinary Guild." Bilbo said. "My first loyalty is to Thorin, though." When he noticed how still this declaration made the others, especially the king, he quickly added, "I mean the company, edible, all that." Balin smiled. "Aye, that is right enough. And it would do Ori well to remember his is the same, as he accuses Bumba of stealing you away." "This is a good thing," Thorin said firmly. "I knew Bumba would not let his people tax you unduly, but now you will be able to do what you will with your mushrooms." "Tax?" Bilbo was vaguely familiar with the concept of taxes. In the Shire, they were mostly voluntary, of course, but he'd always seen the sense behind giving a little money now and again to keep up the bounders and the roads and whatnot. "Indeed," Balin said. "Guilds have a right to regulate their crafts. If a non-member wishes to sell prepared foodstuffs in Erebor, they must obtain a license from the Culinary Guild and pay a small percentage of their profits for the privilege." "Oh, is that why your grandfather did not want them to have a guild?" Thorin looked sharply at Bilbo. His blue eyes were narrow and considering, but he didn't seem to find whatever he was looking for in Bilbo's face. "My grandfather did not want them to have a guild, for the same reason I did not want Maud to have the gold I promised to the people of Lake Town. When one is mad, one does not think much of the needs of others." A hiss broke the silence of the office, and Bilbo realized he was sucking in air as though he had forgotten to breathe. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean—" "All is well," Thorin said, and his features softened.
You did not know. Moreover, you are correct that the inherent right of a guild to tax is an often cited reason why a culinary guild has not been allowed to form. It is common for the poor of any city to earn a little money by catching rabbits or gathering food, and selling to others without the time to do so. A mother might make stew enough for her children and invite neighbors to eat the extra for a small fee, yet there is a danger in that too.
Many times over the course of our exile, Balin said, our people were taken advantage of. Wicked men would sell us bad meat or poor foodstuffs for far more than we could afford. Even dwarven merchants who were unused to dealing in food, but saw the potential for profit, were guilty of making people sick. It cannot happen again. A well-regulated guild is the best answer.
It is an answer,
Thorn agreed.
and I am happy enough to give it to Baba. Certainly the ancient prejudice against crafting with cookery is foolish. That is based more upon the fact that ingredients must always come from Yavanna's gifts, instead of Mahal's, than any true doubt of the skill required. But though I would have them regulate the sale of foodstuff in Ermo, I cannot afford to offer the Culinary Guild a monopoly on the providing of it.
No, Bilbo said, realizing what the king meant. The poor of your realm will always have a table at which to eat. The hobbit's little heart felt like it would melt away within his chest. Thorin's face was so gentle and good.
Yes, they will.
That deep voice rumbled through Bilbo's body and set his stomach aflutter.
To Mumba's credit, he did not even argue the point with me, though his guild is paid for labor done in my kitchen at a far lesser rate than they might charge to other coffers.
You really are a very fine king, Bilbo said softly. Very fine indeed. He felt he should drown in the deep blue of Thorin's eyes, and he would not mind a bit, meaning such an end was not an unhappy fate at all. Gifting him with a rare true smile, Thorin said,
It is not a time for me to receive congratulations.
A warm, impossibly strong hand went to the back of Bilbo's neck and pulled him close. For a wild, desperate second, the hobbit thought Thorin might kiss him. Instead, Bilbo found his forehead pressed against the king's in a dwarvish gesture he had received before from other members of the company, though never with such an effect. It felt nice. Nicer than a hug, even, for both of Thorin's hands were on him, one holding the base of his neck and the other gripping Bilbo's waist firmly. Bilbo put his own hands to Thorin's sides and held on gently, keeping him close.
Achieving a mastery in any craft is no small thing, my burglar. I am proud of you.
Thorin's breath was hot across Bilbo's cheeks, and it smelled a bit like tea. For a much longer, much wilder moment, Bilbo thought he might lose all control of himself and kiss the king. Thank you, he said breathlessly, his heart racing in his chest. Leaving Bilbo utterly bereft, Thorin straightened up and turned back to the papers on the desk that had been forgotten when the hobbit interrupted.
Now I must go see Doran about the price of granite. If we are correct about this president, then he is behaving criminally.
We are, Balin said, following the change of subject easily. Bilbo, who had a hobbit's natural tendency to fail to drop a subject that interested him, even when given a large hint, said, Won't you come with me to breakfast?
I have already had tea,
Thorin said dismissively. Bilbo assumed he meant the beverage, not the meal, as it was only just dawn. Drinking a cup of tea might certainly be part of breakfast, but the hobbit failed to see how it precluded taking the rest of the meal. I will come with you, Bilbo, Ori said, for I have had nothing at all this morning, and now that the translating is done, I am not needed here. As will I, Balin said. Even an old body like mine needs fuel. Unfortunately, Thorin only nodded, giving the three of them permission to go, before stalking off elsewhere to do kingly things. However, Bilbo did not sigh to see him go. Really, it was quite a lucky escape, as the hobbit might have embarrassed himself if things had continued on in such a friendly way. Growing accustomed once more to Thorin's proximity, to the intensity of his good opinions, to how much Bilbo craved the slightest touch of the king's hand, all of that would take time. Only ever seeing him at a polite distance for months on end meant Bilbo was no longer used to things like a friendly pat on the shoulder. Hopefully, he would acclimate sooner rather than later. Once he did, they could return to the amiable camaraderie he had struggled so hard to earn along the road to Erebor without anything embarrassing happening. In the meanwhile, there was other work to be done, and Bilbo was very pleased to be allowed space in the Culinary Guild hall to do it. A nice young dwarf with one of the plain gold cauldron pins, indicating they were craftsmen, pointed Bilbo to an empty workroom. There wasn't much in it but a fireplace and a single table, which made it perfect for his uses. It was clear that the underpopulated, unfinished guild was being built with the expectation of many more occupants in the future. Bilbo was also able to nip a good knife, needle, and ball of string from the guild storeroom. He was a burglar, after all, and he would put the knife back. By far the most useful thing he acquired in the guild hall that morning, though, was not string, space, or tools. It was young Leah, who seemed more than happy to help him carry the 9 big barrels of mushrooms from his little farm to the workroom. She carried barrels Bilbo could not lift 2 at a time, seeming happy to volunteer, even when he made it clear that only one was to go to Bomber's kitchen. "You're a very useful lass to have about," Bilbo observed happily when they brought the last barrel of trilbies to the workroom. His pocket was jingling merrily with the proceeds of the sale to the royal kitchen, and he had a solid plan. "I don't suppose you'd like to learn to string mushrooms for drying?" "Yes!" she cried, grinning fiercely and startling the little hobbit rather badly. Immediately, she schooled her features professionally. "I mean, if it please you, Master Baggins, I should very much like to work as your apprentice. For 5 crowns a week?" "Oh, well," Bilbo supposed he should have been expecting as much. It wasn't fair to ask her to work for free, of course. He really ought to pay her. 5 crowns a week was manageable, though it might take him a little while longer to get things set up if he had to budget for a regular expense. Likely he would not be able to invest as much as he wanted in the riskier but more amusing venture he had planned. Still, fair was fair, and 5 crowns a week was a pittance for such a strong young dwarf. 7 crowns, she said quickly before he could agree to the first price. What?" Bilbo was fairly sure haggling usually worked the other way round, and it wasn't particularly nice of her to increase her asking wage by such a sum so abruptly. "I insult you by offering so little," Leah said. 10 crowns a week, please." "Leah, I don't understand. Are you offering to pay me? To work for me?" "To work as your apprentice." Leah narrowed her eyes as if wondering if Bilbo might be a bit slow. It was an expression he was used to seeing on dwarvish faces. "I should very much like to learn from you. I know you have only just been made a master, and only just learned my name as well, but we've worked together many times in the royal kitchen. You have skill and knowledge that no dwarf possesses." Well, Bilbo felt his chest puffing up a bit. That was quite a high compliment from a dwarf. "I am very flattered, and I should very much like to have you work for me. I'd be more than happy to teach you a few tricks in the kitchen. However, by my own customs, you know, I should pay you for your labor. There will be a lot of carrying heavy barrels in your future if you throw your lot in with me. We may take trips to Dale markets when I need produce and fresh herbs, for I do not trust them to bring the best to Erebor when so many dwarves cannot tell the difference. Probably there will be a great deal of other tedium besides. I am trying to sell my mushrooms in the best way, and that must be my first priority. I cannot be always teaching you new things." "Yes!" she agreed quickly. "That is exactly what I expect of an apprenticeship. I am a hard worker. Lord Bomber will vouch for me. I can be of use to you as you build your business." "I'm sure you can," Bilbo said warmly, pleased to find her so excited to work for him, even after he explained. "I shall pay you 5 crowns a week to start. I know it is not much, but once things stop moving, and I have more liquid capital, I promise to triple it." "Absolutely not!" Leah said, brown eyes wide with shock. "I want to be your apprentice, not a hired hand. But perhaps you would be kind enough to accept 5 crowns a week from me for the privilege. It is very little." "It is very ridiculous," Bilbo said. "If you are paying me to work, where does your own money come from? You will never get anywhere if you do not look out for yourself, young lady." "I can make 5 crowns in a single day working with the restoration groups. Any dwarf can. Perhaps you do not know, but it is common for a master to give his apprentice a day of freedom once a week. If you should accept me, I could use such a day to earn my apprenticeship fee and not go into debt at all." She said this as though it was the greatest dream a young dwarf might have. Bilbo found the idea appalling. "Or you could keep those 5 crowns and have 5 more from me besides. I promise I will teach you all I can, whether or not I pay you, but I will not have you working all the time for the privilege of more work. That is not an apprenticeship. That is slavery." Folding her arms over her chest, the dwarf squared her jaw obstinately. I must pay to learn my craft, otherwise there is no proof of my devotion. If you will not accept this, then I cannot be your apprentice. Having spent nearly a year among dwarves, Bilbo could see the unhappiness behind that stubborn face. If she was the emotional sort, like Dory or Bomber, he thought she might be near tears. If she was the other sort, like Dwalin or Thorin, she was probably near a spontaneously violent and shocking action.
1 crown a week, Bilbo said, giving in. You may pay me 1 crown a week for the wonderful privilege of lifting and carrying all the dwarvish things that I am too little to lift and carry myself. That will give you some breathing room, and a little spending money of your own if you are making 5 crowns a week elsewhere, though I tell you now that if you should forget to pay me every so often, I will not mind.
Relaxing a little at this concession, Leah said, It is an insult to your skill as a master to pay you so little. Any who know I pay so small a fee will think less of you and less of our guild as a result.
I do not see what business it is of anyone else's what agreement we come to.
Nor do I, she agreed, finally uncrossing her arms. We can draw up a contract between ourselves. There is no need to pay a scribe. As a lord of Erebor, anything you set your pen to will be legal enough.
Bilbo sighed. He'd nearly forgotten how fond dwarves were of contracts. They lost the better part of the morning arguing over clauses as he drew one up. Naturally, their points of disagreement had been entirely cultural. He wanted to guarantee her a day off every week in writing. She thought more than a line spent on that was a waste of ink, but wanted to spend 4 inches carefully detailing that she would be allowed to take breaks for eating and sleeping, as well as the times of day that she would be allowed to eat and sleep. She even wanted it in writing that she should be allowed to relieve herself. As though Bilbo would ever deny anyone the basic right to a nice luncheon and a little private time. However, they were able to reach concessions in most places, and Bilbo was able to crib a few things like funeral arrangements, should she die in his service, directly from his own contract with Thorin's company. Of course, she thought those passages were very appropriate and perfectly phrased. After a break for lunch, they signed the contract. Bilbo received 1 gold coin from his new apprentice, and they finally got down to the important work of stringing mushrooms to dry. It was time-consuming, but most things worth doing were.